Good afternoon, Harvest Fest. How's everybody doing? Before I begin, I absolutely have to take just please one moment of silence for the people who have passed this year for so many reasons, who are so beloved to us all. Thank you, everyone. All right, I'd like to thank the band again. I would like to thank Rob Robinson for getting us together every year here at New York Harvest Fest. And I would like to thank all of you who come every year to listen to me. My name is John Skerritt, and I am the author of An Adult's Playground of Pot, a book about cannabis. My speech today is brought to you through the time-consuming research efforts of myself and my girlfriend Lillian, the beautiful girl over there in the pretty pants. Today, I want to talk about misinformation. What does that mean? It certainly is a big word. Since I'm a cannabis activist for the past 40 years, I'm very familiar with what misinformation means. I have seen it repeatedly. When I watch the news, when I listen to the politicians, when I look at the health websites, I see the same series of information. One news headline telling me that cannabis is bad for you for this reason, and another one telling me it's good for you for this other reason. Whenever you see opposing views offered repeatedly like that, that's a sign of misinformation. Jack Harrar understood what that meant. He wrote The Emperor Wears No Clothes, outlining the system used. He was pretty smart. He ignored the media and the government agency bullshit and dug deeper into the research itself. He found something important. He found when the government sponsored research prior to 1976 that concluded cannabis was harmless, the research was published along with the study methodology used. But for studies concluding that cannabis was harmful after 76, the study methodology was not published at all and had to be requested under the Freedom of Information Act. When it was released, it showed severe scientific flaws in the methodology. The government hid the details of the scientific studies used to determine that cannabis was harmful because those details exposed bad science. The media, who are there to force the lies into the minds of the citizenry, just went along with the scare tactics. They told the lies the government instructed them to and censored anything contrary. Specifically, what happened was that they released information claiming that monkeys smoking 30 joints a day began to atrophy and die after 90 days. To make everyone afraid, the headlines read, "Pot kills brain cells." When the methodology was released, it was shown what the scientists actually did was to strap monkeys into a chair, clamp respiratory masks onto their faces, and then force them to inhale the equivalent of 60 joints worth of smoke in 5 minutes through these masks, letting in no air whatsoever, and did that every day for 5 months. That caused complete oxygen deprivation to the monkeys, and that was already known to show that it killed brain cells. So the scientists got exactly what they wanted. Jack Harrar proved that there was a concerted effort of the US government, the scientific community, and the major media to keep cannabis seen as dangerous in the minds of the population, which in turn frightened the citizens. Once everyone was scared, they themselves kept cannabis illegal by remaining compliant in the face of the laws. Just to drive this home, everybody remained compliant. When the citizenry figured out what was going on, they started to change the laws. But the federal government and almost all state governments, supported by the scientific community, still use the media as a tool to fight them every step of the way. To this very day, the CDC, who so many people seem to suddenly trust, says this about cannabis: Smoke from marijuana contains many of the same toxins, irritants, and carcinogens as tobacco smoke, which is true of the fan leaves, but not the buds that we're smoking. 1 in 10 marijuana users will become addicted. Researchers have found limited evidence of an association between marijuana smoking and testicular cancer. The concept of marijuana as a gateway drug generates a lot of disagreement. Researchers haven't found a definite answer yet. In response to this misinformation, the politicians join right in. For example, as early as 3 years ago, Andrew Cuomo is quoted in the media as using the gateway theory to keep cannabis illegal in New York, and it still is, with people going to jail for it. So I am detailing how the governments, media, and health organizations work together to try to keep cannabis illegal and tied up away from us. This process is highly effective because it is extremely difficult to change somebody's mind once they have been convinced of something false. Now, to get to the current state of affairs. People are dying from what is being called a virus named COVID-19. I am sorry to report to you that the exact same misinformation campaign as was used to make and keep cannabis illegal is going on with the current health scare called COVID-19. And I can prove it. When I read the news, I see the exact same steps are being taken to make everyone afraid. The headlines read, "Deadly virus, do not go out without masks or you will make each other sick." The research suggesting viral infections are transmitted from person to person is shown to be faulty when you look into the studies and again, review the methodology. There has never been a controlled study which proved that a viral particle can transmit illness. In viral research, Koch's postulates, K-O-C-H, details the procedure for isolating a virus and transmitting it to a new host, thus confirming cross-infection. Koch postulates have never been truly fulfilled according to the methodology for any virus. For the amount of time I have here, very quickly, I will go through just one of them. The postulate states the microorganism must be found in abundance in all organisms suffering from the disease, but should not be found in healthy organisms. However, in a recent New York Times article, doctors concerned about oversensitivity with the PCR test reported that the standard tests are diagnosing huge numbers of people who may be carrying relatively insignificant amounts of the virus. Relatively insignificant is not equal to abundance. So this fails the first postulate. So in order for COVID to be the pathogen responsible for this outbreak of disease, all of those infected with it should have multitudes of replicated virions readily found upon testing. But research suggests this is not the case. And so the virus does not act like a virus. Keep in mind that this is only part of the first of 4 postulates which should have been involved when COVID was identified by the scientific community. But instead of following the established scientific process in order to prove this, the pseudo-scientific myth of contagion is being based on more bad methodology, this time in epidemiology. In broad terms, epidemiology studies when and where specific populations get sick. If you've ever been warned of a worse cold and flu season, that insight was passed to you from epidemiologists. Epidemiologists gather statistics to identify trends and attempt to track and measure the dynamics surrounding disease. You all thought they were working in front of a microscope in a lab. The process of gathering data for this purpose is done through something called an epidemiological observation. The epidemiological observation scientists made when they discovered a new coronavirus was as follows. Animal subjects, bats, pigs, and sheep, began to show symptoms of respiratory illness, so scientists viewed genetic material samples taken from their lungs under a microscope and found there something that they hadn't before. Then, based on symptoms, they assumed the new particle they found was an infectious pathogen. That's it. They assumed. That's it. But in truth, they never considered whether these never-before-seen particles might have a different function. And as you may have heard, it can be hard to prove causation and rule out statistical correlation. Now that I have emphasized that all it takes to study as an epidemiologist is to observe whether you can from the frequency and distribution of disease, we must turn to virology to expose another lie. My friends, I am here to tell you today that viruses do not exist. Today I'm going to give you some real health information. Exosomes. You may have never heard of exosomes because the scientific curiosity for them was lacking in academia when they were first discovered in 1983. The biologists thought that they were essentially little sacks of cellular waste which carried discarded proteins and genetic material away from the cell. More recently, research has revealed that there are numerous types and that they are more sophisticated and heavily involved in communication between cells. Among a growing faction of medical professionals, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Andrew Kaufman states this about the pandemic. When we are testing for this supposed virus, we are actually testing for these exosomes, which confirm that there is some kind of unhealthy process going on in the body. Scientists know cells release exosomes when they are put under different stressors. More importantly to us, they know there is no distinguishing factor to speak of between exosomes and the viruses. They are alike in every observable way. Research leads to the conclusion that the PCR test is finding these exosomes and not a new virus. Are you still not convinced that your experts are blatantly ignoring their own rules? Well, where does the virus exist before it enters my body? In an animal? Where was it before that animal contracted it? Do you think it was originally created through mutation? The mystery of mutation. Scientists don't yet have a definite answer on what causes mutation, but genetic damage seems to play a role. In other words, I am claiming to you that disease does not occur spontaneously, as though new pathogens could just mutate and pop up at any time. There must be something to cause the mutation. There is something that inhibits the normal function. So if there is no virus, what is making people sick? Well, according to epidemiology, if one person in a closed environment in your home is sick with other people, they'll show symptoms. Because of concurrence, it looks as if one person makes another sick. But concurrence does not prove causation. In order for me to explain what is really happening, first, I need to detail the meaning of the cleansing process we call getting sick. The thing that actually makes people have symptoms we call sickness are all of the poisons we are subjected to in our environment constantly, which includes chemicals and electromagnetic waves. You, every one of you, has more than 400 poisonous chemicals in your fats, in your body, right now. And some of you have many more. We are bombarded by over 30,000 chemicals in our environment. At any point, your body can have a reaction to any one of these poisonous substances that you are constantly bombarded with. A reaction to a poisonous substance will cause your body to begin to try to eject that substance, and it has systems in place to do that. For example, when your lungs are poisoned, you will begin to drip mucus. You will begin to sneeze and cough. You will feel weak because your body is using energy to remove the poison. Your fever will go up, so your body will burn calories to burn off what it is that has gotten into your system, which is foreign to it. This is your body's poison removal system at work. You will feel terrible from all of this. And if you are older and weakened and suffering from body function failures and poison bad enough, you will die. We call this getting sick, but it is really a process of your body making itself well, not sick. I mentioned this can be somehow transferred to people who are living in the same environment. And this has to do with the fact that we are all connected. Outside of all of your awareness, your bodies are communicating with one another. They are transferring all kinds of information about your emotions and what is affecting you and your environment. When your body is poisoned, besides ejecting the poison, it does one more thing. It transmits a warning that it has been poisoned to the other people's bodies in the vicinity. It does this so that they can turn on their systems that protect them from poison. The mechanism for doing this is called biophotons. What does that mean to the person receiving that message? Their body knows it needs to protect itself from poison. So just as in my example of the lungs being poisoned, the respiratory system will begin to eject mucus, and they will have the exact same symptoms that the sick person is having. That person's body is smart enough to know it has to protect the body from poison. There is obvious evidence this type of information transfer is going on. Think about what happens when you move a dozen women into a dormitory to live together for a year. As you know, the answer to that question is that their menstrual cycles will harmonize. But it's not like they have a discussion about it or play some card game for it to happen. So what makes people sick? Their bodies transfer information outside of their awareness. What is really going on? What's making everybody sick? Because something is happening. Something's poisoning us. It is shown in over 1,000 peer-reviewed studies that microwave radiation, like what is emitted from cell towers, harms our bodies in many ways. One important way is that it can prevent your body from properly absorbing oxygen. Some of the radiation being emitted from cell towers is at the same resonant frequency as the oxygen in your blood, where it affects the orbital path of the electrons in the oxygen atom in a way that causes iron to ignore it. So when your iron atoms try to bring oxygen to your hemoglobin, the oxygen is not there. Since your cells are starved of oxygen, they then send a message that poison needs to be ejected from the respiratory system. And you begin to drip mucus, and you begin to cough, because you're trying to get rid of the poison. If all of this is true, then what is going on with masks and lockdowns? Do I expect all of you to believe that the governments and medias and health industry have shut down the economy everywhere? The answer is yes. I expect all of you to believe that, mostly because it is obvious that they did, but here is the justification. I think by now, you all already know that all the industries on Earth are controlled by the wealthy families. But what you may not yet really understand is that at the point that the wealthy controlling families like Rockefeller, Rothschild, Quinault, and others became multi-billionaires, they had more money than they could possibly ever spend. Let me give you a perspective. If you have $100 in your pocket, 1 penny is 1/1000th of your value. If you have $1 billion, 1/1000th of your value is $1 million fucking dollars. They don't need us. They've got all the money they need. Since they no longer need us to earn money, and they have robotics and artificial intelligence in place, they now need you to be controlled. They need you to do exactly what they say. They need obedience. But we have guns. And there are too many of us to stop with soldiers. So since they cannot force us, they have to trick us. We have guns. You have been locked down and made to wear a mask to prove that you will comply to their wishes. This is proven by the methodology they use. Number one, they use the media to tell us we have to be afraid without publishing the methodology of studies used to set the policy. Number two, censor anyone who disagrees with the promoted mandates, even scientists and doctors. They tell you that you need a mask to protect yourself, to use the emotion of fear. And when they say it is to protect others, they're using the emotion of love. They use your emotions. They manipulate them against you. The police permit riots and protests, but you cannot go out and see a band or have a drink or see your child at a sporting event. Politicians tell us they will remove restrictions when a goal is reached. Then when it is reached, they tell us we have to wait. This is not the first time masks and social distancing has been used. Here in the United States in the 1800s, women and slaves were forced to wear masks made of metal to show that they were not permitted to voice their views. As recently as 1950, blacks were segregated out of schools, stores, and public transportation. And to this very day, LGBTQ identified individuals cannot get work in some states. Part of their control mechanism is to get you to help them, to make each other comply. And many of you are doing the job for them as you fight about masks, calling each other COVID-idiot. And by complying with their useless, scientifically baseless, and senseless social distancing rules. In closing, I want to state that all of this is important to you, because if they can take away your freedom by making you wear a mask and stay home all the time, charge you $1,000 if you don't, you can bet they are not going to let you smoke pot when you want to. If you do not get the masks off your faces, they will just keep making it worse. It does not matter, it does not matter if all of this sounds crazy. I don't care what you guys think of me. I did the research. I have done it. I have all the research to back everything I have said. I have also figured out how to keep from getting sick by boosting your immunity, naturally helping to fight off environmental poisons. I made a website. It's called Let's Take Back Our Life. It's a .org. Let's Take Back Our Life.org. This speech is on that website with a link to every single piece of research I dug up all throughout the entire presentation. I beg all of you to go to my website, look up these links, educate yourselves, tell your family, tell your friends, because brothers and sisters, this is serious. This is not a joke. Now is the time. We must stand together. I love you all.